struggling to move your nonprofit forward? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Nonprofit Architect, where we are giving you the actionable steps you need to launch and grow your nonprofit organization. Now, here's your host, Travis Johnson.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm here with Anthony Ameen, or Doc as he likes to be called, from Wings for Warriors Foundation. Anthony, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
And I'm doing fabulous as always. I'm on the right side of the dirt. I get to talk to someone about their passion. I mean, really, I'm having a phenomenal day. Just a phenomenal day. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you started Wings for Warriors.
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Joined the United States Navy in 2001, shortly after the attacks on September 11th. And I think we all remember, at least those of us that were alive and around, we remember the effects and the trickle effect that had across our country. And at the time that took place, September 11th, 2001, I was kind of squirrely. You know, I was trying community college, and I was partying way too hard, living with mom and dad, couldn't hold a job. And I was just like, I needed some discipline, some guidance and structure in my life at that point. And so that just kind of motivated me to do something and take a step into a direction of life that into the unknown, so to speak. And September 11th, 2002, 1 year after the date or the attacks, I was actually sworn into oath in the United States Navy. And so years and years later, I did 2 deployments, one out at sea and then one in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was a pretty rough deployment. I came home from that deployment and started an organization.
Well, it was a little bit more than a deployment, right? We only see you from the torso up, but you've got a much different picture from the waist down.
Yeah, so we are actually operating against the Taliban's 3rd largest headquarters in Nowzat, Afghanistan. That was in the Helmand province, one of the many provinces that they've now taken over and unfortunately taken over. But this is back in 2008 when things were still heating up. We were actually one of 3 of the hardest hit Marine Corps units. I was with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division. I was a hospital corpsman. So when I first joined the Navy, I was a deck seaman. Didn't love the job, but I did it for 2 years and then had the chance of retaking the ASVAB test, scored very high. Speaking of high, I was probably high when I took it the first time. And so I wasn't a high score. So I got a low job, right? A low ranking job. So when I was 2 years into being a deck seaman, I scored a pretty high score. And they said, you can be an MP or you can be a hospital corpsman. And I chose to be a MP first. They looked at my background and they did a background check. They're like, yeah, it looks like you're going to be a corpsman. And so that deployment was rough. I was called across the battlefield to help one of our other corpsmen render an airway procedure on a Marine that just sat on an IED. Wasn't expected to make it, but our job as corpsmen is to keep them as comfortable as possible before the CASEVAC shows up, and it's up to them in the hospital that they end up flying those patients to save their lives if we can't do it ourselves. And I was the only corpsman that morning that had a Polis litter in my medical bag. Out of about 100 Marines scattered about on the battlefield, and the Taliban was right there reinforcing their troops. And it was kind of like a mess. July 21st, 2008. Then I was called over the radio to run across the battlefield. Air Force and Marine Corps, they dropped a 500-pound bomb. Shockwave comes below our feet, and we're running. And then boom, I heard the loudest explosion I ever heard because it was right under my left foot. And so fast forwarding through all that noise, I came home. God gave me a second chance and I came home alive, but I came home broken to a broken healthcare system. And being a corpsman, I saw both sides of the healthcare spectrum. I knew what it was like to provide for patients. And then now I'm falling victim to being a patient myself. I had 34 surgeries and I was wrongfully denied my benefits from the government I just lost a leg for. And a bunch of, we lost 19 Marines, 1 corpsman and one interpreter. And 160 of us were wounded, 30 of which were amputees, including yours truly. So came home with all the muck that you can imagine, PTSD, alcoholism, addiction. And during that 34 surgery cycle, I was wrongfully denied benefits and started an organization to help. Basically, I took the federal government to court, won. And then I decided, well, maybe I should do this for others, and there's countless people getting wounded around that time. So I started Wings for Warriors, and it was mainly to help give benefits counseling to wounded and disabled veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and helping their caregivers fly and visit their healing heroes at all the military healthcare facilities scattered about the country.
Fortunately for me, I've been in the Navy since July of 2000. I'm still active duty, 21 years in. And fortunately, I never ended up in that situation. My dad was in the Navy, now retired from the Navy in the state of Minnesota, and grew up as a farmer. And he just 2 years ago got his leg caught in a PTO on the back of a tractor, a power takeoff. This is what powers all the other equipment that you can add onto a tractor. So he got his leg caught, wrapped around this spinning shaft, and almost ripped his foot off, spiral fractured his lower leg. And he's always been kind of a smart aleck. So you know where I get it from, but they took him into the doc and they're like, well, it looks like we're going to have to amputate that foot. And he's like, do you have to? He's like, I'm kind of attached to it. And the doctor ended up, running the finger on the bottom of the foot, and the toes moved and wiggled. And he's like, well, we'll give it a shot. He's like, thanks. It's been with me for a while now. And lo and behold, they were able to save his foot and put it back together, and he's walking around fine. But fortunate enough that he didn't really, if the tractor would have been anything other than idle and the rubber boots didn't stop the PTO shaft, they would have ripped his leg off and he would have bled out in the country away from anyone. No one else was there at the time. I don't think so. Fortunately, he was able to get his saved. It's interesting that you lost yours and used that to fuel your passion and helping other people. So from our greatest tragedies come either the greatest victories or the greatest defeats. It's really how we take that moment into perspective and what we do to launch and propel ourselves into the future. So kudos to you for making it out. I'm sure your family and your faith had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely share my faith here in a little bit. But I think just to honor the Marine that didn't make it home, the last patient of mine on the battlefield, his name was Lance Corporal Ivan Wilson. He was a great guy, a great Marine. And I feel in a way, in retrospect, looking back, that Wings for Warriors, not knowingly at the time, because I was just kind of channeling through life and just kind of plugging through with the idea of helping others. But I think by helping others, it allowed me to regain perspective on what took place that day, shifting that perspective and channeling the negativity into a positive outlook as to, I might not have been able to save Ivan Wilson on the battlefield, but off the battlefield, God gave me a second chance, and I've been able to help over 5,000 across the country. And I think that, he didn't lose his life in vain, nor did the other 19 or 20 guys. And, everyone that served in Afghanistan served a purpose. And the Afghan, the way I look at it too is, without getting political, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I actually hate politics, but for obvious reasons, right? Look at where we've been the last 2 years. But with respects to Afghanistan and everyone that served in that conflict, I think that we should honor ourselves, honor our duties, our roles, and what we did for the Afghan people. We gave them a break for 20 years. A lot of veterans are kind of upset about it, especially the Afghanistan veterans. And, I wasn't able to help Wilson, but I've been able to help 5,000 off the battlefield through Wings for Warriors. And, I think about him literally every day, and it motivates me to live for him and all the others that didn't make it home from that deployment, and I feel like that's what my service after service is all about. And absolutely faith, just to get back to that, is a huge component of my success. And I don't mean success like making money or having a cool nonprofit, driving a fancy car, living in a nice home. That's not my version of success is just getting through life with like a healthy attitude and having a healthy energy about yourself. So when you die, there's only two things my grandfather told you that you leave behind. That's your name and your legacy. And so I want my legacy to be like, hey, he helped a lot of people. I think that's a cool legacy to have, right? And then my name, it's Ameen.
That's such a fantastic perspective. I know we talked a little bit before the show started about our backgrounds and what it takes to really put that in perspective and do some good with it, which I really love. But you got into Wings for Warriors and you were almost instantly overwhelmed, like so many nonprofit founders and CEOs are. There's just so much going on. You've got all these hats you're wearing. You're the janitor, the CEO, you're the PR guy, you're the fundraiser, you're everything. How do you sift through all of that stuff and stop wearing like every stinking hat in the organization?
Well, see, I didn't know. And even though I read the book, Nonprofit for Dummies, that was like when I had the idea to start the organization and like, get the 501c3 status and all that. When I literally, before I even did any of that, I bought the book Nonprofit for Dummies, but nowhere in that book did it say anything about all the hat wearing and the hot mess that it was going to turn into, right? And so it's a brilliant question, Travis. I would have to say that I just kind of took it day in and day out. And at one point, which was 8 years later, I was so burnt out. I wanted nothing to do with the organization, like at all. I didn't even want to hear the words Wings for Warriors. That's how burnt out I was. Just around that period of time, though, my faith was really building and building strong. And I felt like I just needed a break. And so I actually asked the board's permission at first to take a 40-day sabbatical, which they were quick to do. They knew I was burnt out, and they knew that the organization wouldn't stand on its own without me. So they wanted me to just kind of cool my jets and regain strength and come back. Well, when I came back from a 40-day sabbatical, I said, guys, that wasn't enough. I need like a year. And everyone was like, what? And I'm like, I need like a year off. I want to go back to school. There's a really enticing opportunity that a local university is offering. And so I just, once they gave me permission to do so, I did it. I mean, I was still available to everyone. But, we had an interim CEO for about a 10-month period. And a dear friend of ours was a nonprofit partner at the time. And he kind of came in and cleaned house and just kept things organized and kept the legs of Wings for Warriors in place, and was really just waiting for me to come back. And I think when I was ready to come back, it was 2020. And that's a weird time to come back from a year break. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. So you got the chance to kind of step back, really kind of delegate all these different things. And what did you learn about your time off? Because so many founders feel like they have to be in it. They have to be doing everything. Really what I hear, and tell me if this is different from you, is that you don't trust anyone, and the only way to win is by micromanaging. Is that how you felt, or did you feel about it a different way?
No, that's a great point. So I think as nonprofit leaders, I think probably more so than just like a founder of a normal for-profit company, right? I feel like they're going to be very, very nitpicky. They're going to be very controlling, and they're going to have that founder syndrome where they just want to manage and nitpick everything that's going on. And I was very much doing that for a good number of years. And sure, I work for the board of directors, and I'm the CEO, the chief executive officer, but the officers of the board that were voted in, I mean, when they give you permission to leave, that's your chance to leave and take a break. And so I did. So January 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2019, I was free and clear. All I had to do was just check in every now and again and just make sure things were working and operating. If they got into a corner with something, they'd call me, and I was always available. And it was actually during that year that I wrapped up a 4-year degree in healthcare management. And then on or around the 9 or 10 month mark, I still had a few months left in the year. And I'm like, I'm very ADHD. And I wanted to fulfill the year with something. And so I was like, I don't want to just sit around for 3 months because I'm a busy person. I'm a productive human being. So I was like, I'm going to write a book. And I did that. I was actually at a local coffee shop, just kind of scribbling down my thoughts as to what I did right over the years and what I did wrong over the years with regards to a nonprofit. And if I was to write a letter to someone that was going to start a charity, there's so many people over the years that say, hey, I have a friend or I have a coworker that want to start a charity. Can you go take them out to lunch? Can they take you to lunch and can they pick your brain? My answer is no. I wrote a book called Nonprofit Sucks. And it's literally a book that does just that. It tells you how to start a nonprofit, what to expect. And it's mainly a love letter to future founders of charities, or maybe leaders in the nonprofit sector that have been in the nonprofit industry for a while, and they just need a recharge. This is a good, humorous book that kind of talks about my success and pitfalls over the years, what I did wrong, what I did right. And I'd say what the acronym was, but then I'd have to kill you. I want people to buy the book. I want them to buy the book and figure out what SUCK stands for.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting that you don't take those lunches, because I don't take those lunches or those calls either anymore. It turns out that, not that I don't want to support startups, that's really what this is. But this podcast, this how-to show where I interview the experts and we get the behind the scenes look, this is my free offering. And I truly don't have the time to sit down with everyone that wants to start a nonprofit. I really just don't. With all the things that I'm working on, all the things that I'm building, still being full-time active duty Navy, I just don't have the time. And I always get the same questions, and I created something like you've created, like a nonprofit in a box. You can go on my website and you can download this thing. It has all the startup documentation, all the board description, all the bylaws, all the different policies and procedures you need to have in place to get started. And if you're willing to take a look at this thing and buy this thing, I'll talk to you. But without that transaction, I really just don't have the time in the business world and the things that I'm doing to really sit down and have that conversation, because it's a lot. It's a lot of a conversation. It's not a quick, like, well, do you just file the paperwork? Anybody can Google the 1023 EZ and file the paperwork. It's not a paperwork discussion. It's so much.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you could have done a podcast on any topic, any subject. Why nonprofits? Why as a Navy veteran of 21 years, like what made you decide, I'm going to wrap my head or this whole project around nonprofits? I'm just curious.
Nonprofits are what kept me and my sister and my mom sheltered, clothed, and fed all of our life. We grew up in trailer parks and foster homes. Every time my mom needed mental health treatment for bipolar, my sister and I would move somewhere, either with a family member. She generally moved in with dad. I moved in with grandma, or it was with my mom, or it was with a foster care home. 5 different ones, I think 8 total. And without the support of the nonprofits and social services and different individuals and churches around the area, and yes, I know a church is also a nonprofit, we wouldn't be anywhere close to being capable of functioning as human beings. And then through my time in the military, I got very fortunate where I got into a community where there really is only one location for this type of equipment in the military, flying the E-6B Mercuries, Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City. So I've spent the vast majority of my career stationed in the middle of the country, which is just nuts, especially for Navy. But I got to a point where I was really, was able to use my faith, my service, and my spouse really to kind of really build my foundation. And I looked around, I was like, you know what? I don't know what it really means to belong. At this point in time, I had moved more than 40 times, and most of them were prior to the Navy. And I was like, how do I really be part of community? I had no idea. And I was like, how do I be a part of community? Like, what do people in community do? And it turns out they do things like nonprofits. They show up, they vote, they donate money, they get their names put on buildings for being good people and helping a cause. And I started having some of these conversations, and I didn't know what to do, but I knew that if I showed up with a good attitude, willing to work and willing to help, that I could get just about anything I wanted accomplished. And from that first meeting, it led to a few introductions. And before I knew it, I was a published author and on the board of Books by Vets. And then later, the next year or a year and a half, was on the board of the Shine Foundation. And so I really loved the fact that I was in a place now to give back from all the help that I had received growing up, which is just crazy. But then I got stationed in the Kingdom of Bahrain. And for those of you that don't know, the Kingdom of Bahrain is a small island nation in the Persian Gulf. No kidding. If you're in the military, they say the Arabian Gulf because we don't want to give the Persians credit for owning this thing. But it's between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then across the water, of course, is Iran. And so you're right there in the midst of things. And I wanted, just like you, saying you have ADHD and you finish your degree and then you squeezed out a book in 3 months. I wanted to make sure that the year I was away from my family over in the Middle East, that I had something productive to do. And I was trying to figure out what it was. I had one internship and one paper away from finishing my master's degree in human relations. And someone suggested, like, well, you want to do like nonprofit stuff, right? That's what you were doing. I was like, yeah, I would love to. And they're like, well, why don't you start a podcast and talk about these things? And I wasn't really sure what to create. And so I looked around at like the top 25, top 50 nonprofit podcasts. And at the time I looked, there wasn't a really how-to show for nonprofits in the top tier of the game at the time. I'm sure there was how-to shows out there, but none of them were being written about. None of them were ranked as far as I could see. So I really wanted to fill a gap and provide some real value to help the helpers, because I had some experience, but I didn't know everything. So I wanted to bring on nonprofit leaders, business leaders, consultants, and people with special skills, all in effect to help build stronger nonprofits. And I tell you what, at the time of this recording, it is exactly 23 months. It is 8/23, and I started this thing on September 23rd, 2019. So exactly 23 months after we launched our first episodes, that I'm getting to sit down and talk with Doc here about all this great stuff that we're doing. And it's just taken off like wildfire. It's been amazing. And I knew that through these conversations, we would help nonprofit founders like yourself, give them a little how-to, a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of encouragement, maybe a couple ideas on how to get something rolling so they can actually bring the money in that they're meant to bring in so they can have that impact that they want to have. And maybe they're going to help the future me, right? They're going to help someone like Travis when Travis was a kid, help them get sheltered, clothed, and fed so they can create a foundation on which upon to grow.
It's an incredible story or backstory. And, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe there's 43,000 veteran nonprofits here in
53,000.
Okay. So 53,000. All right. So that's quite a bit. And we're just one of, so I appreciate you having us on, and it's an honor to be present here. So.
Oh, absolutely. I love your story. I love what you've done. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how you used that COVID year to actually change from a traditional nonprofit to a foundation. How did you make that decision? And what are the things that you needed to do in order to make that transition?
Great question. So over the years, I've been asked to be a keynote speaker at events, and whether it's large scale events, medium, small events of 50 people or less, and a lot of times my message is embrace the suck, adapt and overcome. And it's almost like during the whole year of 2020, I was hearing my own keynotes over and over and over again. And of course, I'm not being asked to keynote because there's social distancing. I'm not giving my speaking delivery because there were no fundraising events, in-person events because of social distancing. And I wasn't traveling either. So I was stationary here in Phoenix. And because my other small business is a healthcare consultancy, I use that. I'm guilty as charged, but I use that as I'm essential. And I literally went to a hotel lobby and said, I'm essential. I'm a healthcare consultant. I need to use your lobby to work. And so the good Lord gave me an environment where I had an office, and I was able to drive to it every single day, Monday through Friday, even Saturdays and Sundays, honestly. And I was working sometimes 14-hour days in a hotel lobby, juggling 2 different small businesses and trying to figure out, am I going to have to shut either of these 2 or both down and get a normal 9 to 5, And even that was challenging. So I was burnt out on the initial model of helping wounded warriors, disabled veterans with benefits counseling. And I was actually trying to pull myself away from being the benefits counselor because I single-handedly helped 5,000 veterans and caregivers across the country, and it burnt me out, rightfully so. And I wasn't getting paid as much as you would want to be getting paid for the hours I was putting in for that commitment. And I was trying to figure out, how can I keep Wings for Warriors afloat, but remove myself from that leadership role and be more of a traditional CEO where I'm kind of the puppet master, managing everything and delegating everything, but not doing everything, not doing all that hat wearing that we were talking about earlier. And so I was like, I kind of want to create a foundation model where we can partner with other amazing organizations that may or may not be struggling as well right now, which they all were, big and small. And so that's what we did. The new model is basically we find, fund, and fuel 4 organizations within a 2-year period that are doing amazing work for all veterans, even first responders. During the year of 2020, I think we all saw from the sidelines some of the way in which our uniformed patriots here at home were being treated. And we saw the overtime that the EMTs and firefighters were putting in for all their medical calls relating to COVID. And I wanted to help the first responder community as well. And so with all that being said, the new model is essentially helping veterans with transformational growth, overall health and well-being, and spiritual fitness. Again, back in like 2018, 19, my faith was stronger than ever. And I was able to look at stepping on that bomb as a blessing in disguise. And most people couldn't say that if their leg was taken to an IED on the battlefield, how in the hell can that be a blessing? Well, I'm married with 4 amazing kids. I'm a CEO of an amazing nonprofit that's helped thousands of people across the country. I'm comfortable. My whole family and a lot of my friends and family here in Phoenix, we're all healthy and happy. I've got amazing Marines and sailors that I can call any day or night, anytime, day or night. I'm a blessed man. And I really don't know if I would have all that if I was killed on the battlefield, It's kind of easy to see it as a blessing when you put it in perspective like that. So the new model is being received very well. And the 4 organizations, sorry if I'm rambling, I'm just passionate, but the 4 organizations, one's doing equine therapy. Another one's doing travel-based adventures. Another one's doing hyperbaric oxygen treatment for TBIs and PTSD, also helping Gold Star families with retreats and counseling. And then you've got another one doing faith-based trauma recovery healing and counseling as well. And Wings for Warriors Foundation is, if you will, a marketing public awareness outlet for these organizations. And we help bring them veterans and first responders, as do they us, with what we do as well. So it's partnerships.
I love this shift in what that looks like. So tell me if I'm on track or if I don't have the details quite right. So when you were Wings for Warriors as just a nonprofit, you would be generating money and then providing counseling to help families, find their way through the VA healthcare system to get the services they need. And then also those that were healing at different hospitals and places around the country, you would fly their family members to them, which is the Wings part. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And so now the Wings part of it is just uplifting, right? We're just lifting the troubles and the challenges of those communities that we're serving. And so the name Wings can be applied, Wings for Warriors. It can be applied in a few different ways. As a board of directors, we are discussing how to bring back our initial programs and services back, but they do realize that it's very time consuming and that it would take away from what the current funding model and business model is offering. So we're trying to figure out how to bring a team of counselors that are willing to volunteer. So if anybody's listening and knows of another organization out there that might be willing to help us bring back the benefits counseling, we are more than open to receiving those ideas. And it will come back. It's just a matter of when, and we're kind of enjoying the break as we are exploring the new as well.
So if you're talking about benefits counseling, I use Savvy and Adrian Phillips. And if you go back through my podcast, those of you listening, I got the chance to interview Adrian Phillips right near the start of the Nonprofit Architect podcast. I now am doing counseling as I go through my transition. I'm approved for retirement here next spring. So excited to join the rest of the world and moving on with my next chapter, next phase of life. But she's been providing me counseling and going through all the details and the things that I have afforded to me as a soon-to-be veteran and what that looks like moving forward. So I'm sure Adrian Phillips would be a great person to partner with Savvy, SAVI.org, I believe. If not, you can check the details of that from our interview. Look at Adrian Phillips in all my past shows there. So that's really awesome. So you went from providing services, trying to do all the fundraising and doing most of the services yourself to a more foundation-based, where you are raising money separately in order to feed money into programs that you really care and believe about. Is that about right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And so we screened and vetted, I want to say it was like probably close to 50 organizations. And then we brought it down to the 4 that we voted and brought in. And so the 4 that are currently locked in, they're locked in for this year and they're locked in for next year. And then that following year, by then we would be screening and vetting other organizations. We've already started that process and we're trying to figure out what the next 4 nonprofits are going to be. And these range from $1 million nonprofits all the way down to 50. And so we wanted to give the little guys, the middle guys, and the larger guys all a trying chance. And you would think the larger nonprofit beneficiaries would look at us like, you're crazy, man. You're making a third of what we make. Why do you want to give us your money? Well, it's not about any of that. I don't look at it from a matter of, look, am I a business executive? Yes. Do I look at it from that angle? Absolutely not. Where in the playbook does it say you can't do that? It doesn't. This is my business, and I'm going to do with my business what I want to do. And I want to help organizations big and small, the ones that I feel. Now, I'm not going to help organizations that are making hundreds of millions of dollars because that makes absolutely zero sense. But the ones that are making just over $1 million, I don't think there's anything wrong with giving them a chunk here and there for the services that they're providing, especially if it's something that I either can benefit from or believe in and want to support. So it's really cool, man. So Wings for Warriors Foundation, it's new, it's fresh. I got that new energy. I feel like we've survived the COVID madness, and now we're really gearing up and getting excited for our Thursday, November 11th Veterans Day Gala here in Phoenix. It's at the Madison Center for the Arts from 7 to 10 p.m. We've got musical guests. We've got a short film. It's at a theater, so there's going to be some entertainment on stage. And we're just really hoping that the Phoenicians here in the Phoenix Metro Valley are going to pull out their purses and checkbooks and help support our organization's efforts and our beneficiaries.
Oh, that's wonderful. I got two questions for you I really want to answer. What does the paperwork look like that you have to file to switch your status from a public charity to a private foundation? And I'll think of what the second question is when you answer that one.
We're still public, right? So we're still a public C Corp. We're still a 501c3. It was really just a matter of filing here in Arizona State. So whatever, for the listeners out there, if you're considering doing this, it's actually easier than it sounds. If you wanted to be going from public to private, there is a series of paperwork to update, file, and change. But we essentially are still a public charitable organization, and so it really wasn't as crazy and chaotic as it might appear or sound. It was just a matter of filing with the Arizona State Corporation Commission.
Oh, nice. And then what process did you use to vet these 50 different organizations? I know I've got friends in the nonprofit world and friends in the veteran world that Charity Navigator and GuideStar, although provide great benchmarks for how to look into another organization, they don't really show the whole picture. So what process did you use to go through to find people that were helping, sounds like veterans and first responders, to see what kind of criteria you guys really cared about to then make sure that was your focus and you guys were aligned?
There's a woman that we ended up hiring. She's a nonprofit coordinator, was her title. She also did a little bit of grant work as well, but mainly what she was so gifted and skilled at was doing the behind the scenes buttoning up, research, the development behind the scenes for any nonprofit. And so she can find the red marks very quickly when she looks up a charitable organization's EIN number or tax identification number. So that's essentially what we did. So nonprofit coordinator, she goes behind the scenes. She's looking for any red marks. We would call the organizations that we really, really liked that had a red mark and say, hey, what is that? Is it an easy fix? Is it a hard fix? And so sometimes she would call me and say, I don't think this is a winner. And I'd be like, oh, darn it. And she's like, what's your plan B? And then it was like, what's your plan C? What's your plan D? And you'd be surprised. Some of these organizations, without saying names, because a lot of them are very reputable organizations make mistakes, guys. And look, that's something I want to maybe discuss in my answer back to you, Travis, is that I think it's important to have a nonprofit coordinator glued to your hip at all times, because there might be a season where nonprofit leaders, your board of directors, your volunteers, you're go, go, go. And I think all nonprofit industry leaders understand that once you catch that momentum, you do not slow down. You just keep building upon. And that's the only way nonprofits grow. And so when you lose that momentum, or you hit kind of like a plateau, if you will, it's very easy to miss something when you're in the midst of that go, go, go period. You might be so busy and so high speed at fundraising, marketing, and just getting your donors awareness, all that stuff. And you might have missed a filing somewhere. So it's really important that you don't make those mistakes, because even the big ones with big names, household names, we found during the screening and vetting process had red marks by their name. And these red marks, what I mean by that is they might have a red mark with the IRS, and they have some patching up to do. And we're both in the Navy. They need to plug holes in the ship. And I don't want to be a part of an organization that's ship sinking, because we're going to sink with them if we're the foundation element, right? And it's not like we're their main resource or asset for receiving funds because of our fancy foundation title now. It just means that we are supporting them financially or supporting them with marketing or resources along the way during our partnership. Again, just to reiterate, having a nonprofit coordinator is a must, I think, for any nonprofit to succeed. And if you don't need them full-time, just have them a part of your team, so that when you do feel like you've slipped, or if you want to do a quarterly check, which is what we do, hire someone quarterly and just have them come in and clean up the back end, because you never know who's looking.
I definitely appreciate, keeping the names of the organizations you looked into that maybe not have red marks. I definitely appreciate you keeping those confidential. But it sounds like the gal that you're using, the nonprofit coordinator, she deserves a little plug for her name and her organization that's doing good things so other people can hire her. Who are you using for this?
I don't believe she's practicing anymore, so I don't know if the plug would be necessary, but you can really just Google nonprofit coordinator. The one that we were using, the one that I was referring to, I don't believe is active any longer, but we do have one here in Phoenix, Arizona. A lot of them are grant writers. So any of the nonprofit leaders that are listening, if you have a grant writing team that you're using, usually those individuals on those teams are just as skilled as these individual nonprofit coordinators as well. So I would just say, just do your research, whatever your local area is, where maybe the nonprofit is headquartered, do some due diligence in your neck of the woods, and I guarantee you're going to find someone that has the same skill set.
Well, I tell you what, Anthony, I love everything you've had to say. We've talked about your background, why it is that you started Wings for Warriors and now Wings for Warriors Foundation. I love that you took the terrible event in your life that we don't have any kind of responsibility for, right? These things happen to us. But I love that you took responsibility, got the healing that you needed, and made a way forward and turned it into something positive. And even though you weren't able to save the individual on the battlefield, you've been able to impact more than 5,000 people directly through the counseling you've been doing, and now your continued support with your foundation to your 4 organizations that care about equine travel experiences, hyperbaric chambers and retreats, and faith-based healing. That is just a fantastic way to use your time, energy, and effort. I love that you built a team. And please, if you're listening to this, check out Nonprofits Suck. You can find it on Amazon. And Anthony, where's the best place to get a hold of you?
Best place to get a hold of me, honestly, I tell people LinkedIn, even though I've got a little bit of a following there. I mean, you can still message me, right? Even if we're not connected on there, or if you don't feel like following me, I get it. I don't like to follow others either. Social media is weird, but I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is somewhat of a friendly outlet because you can go back and forth with people in the messaging there. And, I've got a couple of websites, anthony.ameen.com, as well as wingsforwarriors.org.
Thanks again, Doc. Appreciate you having you on the show.
You too. God bless you. And thanks for everything you're doing.
You've been listening to The Nonprofit Architect. To listen to all our past shows, visit nonprofitarchitect.org. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Thank you.